this is what this movie does so well, is that it makes you feel like David Bowie is this myth, this legend, this otherworldly figure who came to Earth to create and just change the world and make it spin a different way and make it look different. And I love that. Hello and welcome to the movie podcast review of Moon Age Daydream. My name is Daniel. I'm one of your hosts today, and joining alongside me are Shabazz.
Hello.
And Anthony.
Hello.
We are officially at the Toronto International Film Festival. This is the festival I think that we look forward to all year round, and it's finally happening. We're finally starting to watch movies, and the movie podcast is going to have lots of reviews, lots of coverage, and lots of interviews coming your way. So please make sure you stay tuned right here to the movie podcast. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Letterboxd at the movie podcast. And if you like what we're doing, consider subscribing. Subscribe to us on YouTube, drop a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and of course, join our Discord. If you're at TIFF, let us know. Maybe we'll bump into you and say hello. But definitely Discord. We're having some great conversations in there, and I think we want to keep this conversation going offline. But of course, we're starting off with TIFF. As I said, this is something we look forward to all year round. Shay, how are you feeling about TIFF this year? We have a lot of great movies coming out.
There's a lot of good movies like we talked about. I think just the overall organization this year is a little different, so I'm hoping we find success with everything that we're trying to look for. So it's hard to say. I think we'll definitely do like a TIFF recap, obviously. For sure. For one of our main episodes, is kind of talking about how our experience goes. I'm a little nervous going into it. I hope it goes smoothly. No film festival ever has, so let's see what kind of happens.
It's a lot of rolling with stuff, going with the flow. We are all accredited this year. We are back to fully in-person events this year. So it's going to be really interesting to see what this all looks like because, as a lot of we started our show in 2019. TIFF, that year, we were still very new. So we were at the festival, but we were just, buying tickets to watch it. And then 2020 and 2021, we are part of the festival, but a lot of it was remote and we were watching things at home. So now here we are, at the festival, going to press screenings and doing all that fun stuff. Anthony, how are you feeling about everything?
I feel a little anxious about it, truthfully, because it is the first time and I feel like I'm overwhelmed with the things with movies. I'm like, do I have to see all these? Because now I'm in a different world.
There's 300 movies I want
to watch.
Right?
Like I usually would buy the movies that I want to watch, but now I have access to all of them, and it's just like, I feel like I have to watch them, but there's so many, and it's just a little bit of a turn in my world because it's been always buying the tickets and going to and hopefully getting what you want, and now it's a little bit different. But overall, I just feel no matter how well you plan and how many lists you make and how many movies you think you're going to see, it never goes to fruition. It's just, It is very, a little bit of chaos when it comes to these film festivals. And I think this year for me, it is really a lot of chaos because there's just so many more movies I have access to.
Yeah. And that's the thing, it's a TIFF madness, as we always say, that is something that holds very true this year, and there's a lot of great movies coming out. And I think 2022, as we've been saying, we've had a lot of great episodes this year. I think is the true sequel to 2019, where we just had incredible movies premiering left, right, and center. And here we are 3 years later, having a great, such an incredible amount of movies, not just at TIFF, but outside of the festival and coming out. We're going into an incredible final 4 months of the year.
From last year, a really great option that they had was the ability to watch a lot of these films at home, which I know TIFF is trying to get people back into the theaters and get that experience. But I think just for time wise and scheduling wise, I think having some of these films accessible through a digital platform makes sense for future options. It just works. I think a hybrid of the two could definitely be the success of the Toronto International Film Festival. I know with Power of the Dog, I think leaked last year and all that stuff, but that's the world we live in.
There's a lot of random ones that
everything's gonna leak. We live in a digital world. People can literally just hack into anything if they wanted to and grab stuff from wherever they want. But
siphon the films. I remember that. Yes,
it is going to happen. But you know, I just think that's a great way of getting people on board.
Yeah, and there is a digital component this year, so I'm not too sure what the assortment of films that are going to be available through that medium is, but we do know it works, and it worked really well from the last couple years that we have used that digital service. So if that's an opportunity to keep that digital platform going, would love to see it. And you know, and we see it throughout the year too from other studios, like A24 has their screening room. They'll be like, hey, this movie's in theaters, but we're doing a screening at this time on Friday. You could watch it at home. So I think that's cool, and I think that's the evolution of what releasing a film is going to look like, is having these hybrid releases. So we'll see, you know. But the movie we're talking about today is Moon Age Daydream. You know, this is the cinematic odyssey exploring David Bowie's creative, spiritual, and musical journey. It's going to be opening up at TIFF. It is also only playing in IMAX during TIFF, which is very, very interesting, and it's very, very cool that is happening, because I think one thing that we will all agree on when we start talking about this film is that it is definitely a sight to behold, and one that would be jaw-dropping to watch on a very, very big screen. Shay, I would love for you to tell us what this film is all about.
A kaleidoscopic weave of archival performances and candid interviews, this portrait of David Bowie from director Brett Morgan, director of Kurt Cobain, Montage of Heck, immerses us in the restless starman's singular galaxy of music, art, and identity. I'll be honest, I'm not gonna lie, that sounded like a Jeopardy question. You know, it's like it's up there, and you're like, "What is Moon Age Daydream?"
It's fitting. It's fitting. Truthfully,
it's very fitting.
Yeah.
I think David Bowie is an artist like no other, and I think having, you know, an experience like this film is very fitting to the person that he was. Anthony, start us off with your first reaction.
Just a little bit of like an introductory to like my introductory to David Bowie was never music. It was actually films, which is, I know, is surprising, but growing up, I remember watching Labyrinth, and he played, you know, the villain Jareth, and that was my first introduction to David Bowie. And then later on, learning that he was a musician, and you know, having all these different hits and songs, and I think it's just fitting that David Bowie was such a artist. Like, no matter what he was doing, he was giving it his all. If it was his music, if it was being an actor, doing his plays, being a painter, writing, like he did it all, which was an amazing thing. Like, you don't find people like that anymore. Like, it's right. Just a crazy endeavor to be able to do all these amazing artistic things. And that's what this documentary, and I don't know if I want to call it a documentary, but this real creative experience with David Bowie, the approach of it is very outside the box. You're brought into this world where there's no real strong, there's no beginning, middle, and end. There's no narrative. It's just, here's the David Bowie experience. And you kind of get the early versions when he was like Ziggy Stardust, and like the androgynous like areas of his persona, and then going into more of the artistic and the paintings and his music, and it just plays all well. And I think it is an experience for me. I wish there was more of a narrative. I think I was looking forward to having more of a, you know, those documentaries where they really go into the archival footage and they tell the story through it without even having any voiceovers. It's just really well cut stuff. And I think that's what my expectations were. But then going into this, it felt like it was everywhere. But then I also kind of stepped outside and said, this makes sense for the movie and who is in this film, like who this is chronicling, and it just worked for that world. And I think there will be audiences that really enjoy it, and I think other audiences will just feel like, I wanted more of that documentary approach. I wanted more to learn about David Bowie and maybe the people around him and his stories, because I don't think there is a documentary yet that really chronicles his life. He passed away in 2016. So I know this was something that was, I guess it has to go through the family and make sure the estate and make sure it works. And I think the estate really loved this approach to David Bowie because it is fitting
Right.
to his persona in his life.
Yeah, it very much is true to Bowie, and I think when you look at the visuals of this film, there's like, and I love what you said earlier, Anthony's like, there's really no beginning, middle, and end to this. There is just the now. There is the experience, and this movie is an experience. It is, you're just transported while watching it, and it's trippy, it's wild to look at, and you're just like, I felt like, I was getting a contact high off of the movie because it is just so out there, and the visuals, we just recently came back from the Academy Museum, and this felt like something that would be playing in one of the installations there, where you're just like watching it and you're just like, wow, this is just visually like wild to put together. And now, of course, I have to hand it to Brett Morgan, who compiled all this footage and made this crazy, weird, visually gorgeous film, because it feels so true to who David Bowie was. You can't put a finger on what he was. You can't put him in a box because he exists outside of that. He exists outside of, the normal structures of how you define an artist or a musician or an actor or a painter. He's just so out there. He's otherworldly. And I think this is what this movie does so well, is that it makes you feel like David Bowie is this myth, this legend, this otherworldly figure who came to Earth to create and just change the world and make it spin a different way and make it look different. And I love that. But like you, Anthony, like, I think it's a matter of what I think you're looking to get out of an experience like this, because it very much feels like an experience. It feels like something that you would watch and you would be part of, and then you kind of go on your way afterwards. I would have loved to have a little bit more traditional, like, information about Bowie and his upbringing and stuff like that, but that's more of a your normal biography or that normal biopic. This isn't that. This is very reminiscent of like the Beatles Get Back doc, which is like 8 hours long, where this is for super fans. This is for fans who want to experience Bowie. This isn't an experience that's like open for newcomers. Like, you're not going to, if someone's just getting into David Bowie, I'm not going to suggest them to start with this film, because this is something that you're like, no, this is what you get once you kind of understand all of his other work. Right. Shay, jump on in.
Yeah, I mean, same as you guys. Like, I like David Bowie. I think his music is fantastic. But when I was watching this, I just kind of kept waiting. I'm like, when does this change? Like, when does, like, because this is beautiful to look at, and I'm sure on a giant screen or in an art installation, that's like kind of the whole vibe that I was getting. Like, this is something that we have in Toronto here. We have the Van Gogh experience that we kind of have going on. I can imagine in a few years, once this movie has kind of had its play, they make like a Moon Age Daydream installation somewhere where the movie's just kind of playing on loop, which it feels like it is. Like, when you're watching it, you just kind of feel like you're going through the motions of it. It's almost like a hop on, hop off kind of tour where you get in, you're like, oh, wow, we're here. All right, that's amazing. Wow, move on to the next portion of it. And while I think that's great, I think when you want to sit down for 2 hours and 50 minutes, it can be a bit daunting because it's just an overload of your senses. And it really is for the die-hard David Bowie fans, like the people that really, really love him, that will, fill in their own narrative, I guess you could say, to this experience. They're going to love it. But again, like you guys mentioned, for people who just want to watch a documentary or who want to just kind of know more about David Bowie, this is the last place you kind of want to go to, because it's meant for everybody. So yeah, it was a unique experience. I don't know if I loved it, but I definitely enjoyed the experience of it.
Yeah, and I think for all of us, we see what this is, right? Like, we see it, we appreciate it, we think it's beautiful to look at and be part of, but there is a lot there. And I think, like you said, Shay, sensory overload is a big thing for this. And I think that makes sense when you're talking about someone like Bowie, that this kind of all fits within, like, here is just like I took all my paint cans and I'm throwing it at my canvas, and it works for Bowie, but it's also a little daunting, like you said, Shay, to get into it.
It's very much of an abstract film, right?
Yes.
Like, when you look at it, I really suggest to Neon to really provide people who go watch this film with an edible, because I think that's probably one of the best experiences. Like I think when I'll have the chance to, I'll rewatch it with an edible just to really dive into that world, because you have to be like, I don't want to say you have to be on drugs to really think like he did, you know.
It's
like
another level of thinking.
It's like it's so alien, and I know a lot of people who really considered him like this alien dude because he was just so out there and explored all areas of life and just being
an existence.
Yes, that's how I feel like I can't reach that level. The only way I can reach it is through probably drugs. Not know, like, we're not talking about hardcore drugs, guys. Okay?
No. Just what's legal, you know, marijuana.
What's legal? Well, in Canada, and then in the States, you know, well, depending on the state you're in, it could be.
Depending what state. Yeah. But yeah, definitely, and that's exactly it. There is an otherworldly, different level of thinking that you experience while watching this film. So definitely, if that's something that interests you, and if you're a big David Bowie fan, I think this is going to be something for you. With TIFF, we're not doing our traditional final recommendations. We want to just more talk about the films and then let you experience them on your own. And of course, if you like what you saw, if you love Moon Age Daydream, right into the show, let us know. Join our Discord. Let's keep this conversation going. There's lots of movies we're going to be looking for at TIFF, but I did want to ask you guys before we did wrap up this episode, were there any other, not final recommendations, but final thoughts on Moon Age Daydream before we wrapped up today's episode?
I think when it comes to, you know, this experience, like there are people that are Bowie fans, like, you know, like hardcore. Regardless of whatever we say, they're going to be watching this. So if you do watch it, we would love to know what you think. And also, what kind of strain were you on when you were watching it? Like, what was it, an indica or no, just let us know, like, if you had a good time.
Yeah. And this also reminds me of something that would get like a crazy home release box set. Like it would be like a box set with like the vinyls and like the 4K Blu-ray.
Yeah, like the Blu-ray would be in half for some reason, and you're like, oh, you have to connect it together in the player to watch it.
Interesting. Yeah, you never know. You know, these home releases are getting crazy and crazier these days. Thank you so much for listening to the movie podcast review of Moon Age Daydream. We are at the Toronto International Film Festival right now. We have lots of movies coming your way, so look forward to all of our coverage. And of course, once we get back on schedule, you can catch a brand new episode of the movie podcast every single Monday. And watch out throughout the week for our interviews and reviews on all the latest movies and series. Check out all of our incredible coverage from The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, out right now on the movie podcast feed and on YouTube. And make sure you subscribe to us there. If you like what we're doing, please drop us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Join our Discord and write into the show at hello@themoviepodcast.ca. Check out our show notes for all of those links and more. That was this time with the movie podcast, and we'll see you next.